Welcome back, and welcome to another video where I review several of the books that I've read recently. I mentioned in my Bout of Books wrap up, which will be up here for you to watch, that I was going to talk about the books in more detail in a separate video. So this essentially is going to be a video of mini reviews. As I've done in previous videos like this one, I will put in the description box the time at which I start talking about each book so that you can scroll through to the book that you want to hear about, or scroll past any books that you don't want to hear about. So all those timings will be down below. And yeah, this is probably going to be quite a long one because I read 9 books during Bout of Books. I'm not going to talk about them all, but I am going to talk about like my highlights and my favourites that I definitely enjoyed. So we've got a cup of tea that's going to see us through. And yeah, I'm going to start with the favourite book that I read of the week, and I wanted to make a whole video about this one, but then I decided to do it in this format instead, and that is 7 Days of Us by Francesca Hornack. This book basically surrounds a family spending Christmas together. We've got a little preview of what happened, like a prologue of what happened before the 7 days that they spend together, and then basically the book starts on the 23rd of December, my birthday, and then it finishes up on New Year's Day basically. So it's that 7-day period covering Christmas and New Year, and how the family kind of gets through this. The basis of this is that they are stuck together for these 7 days because their daughter is a doctor who is returning from treating a virus in Liberia, and they have to be in quarantine for 7 days to make sure that they don't develop any symptoms of this virus. The characters in this book are obviously the parents and the 2 daughters of this family, with some secondary characters in there as well, and we get to hear sort of a chapter from each of the 4 members of the family. We also get a couple of chapters from supporting characters as well, but they're more out of the ordinary, and the chapters tend to be from either Olivia, Phoebe, Emma, or Andrew. Emma and Andrew are the parents, and Olivia and Phoebe are the daughters. The daughters are grown up, it's not like they're children, and they are together in their holiday home in Norfolk, so they're kind of isolated anyway. And it's what happens when, you know, you're with these people 24/7, you don't normally spend that amount of time together, normally one of you's in another country even, and the pressures that puts on them. It's quite hard to talk about the storyline without giving away any spoilers, but this is one of those storylines where you as the reader know stuff that's gone on with these characters that's going to impact on the other characters, and things are all getting a little bit twisted and a little bit, oh, they might find out what's going to happen here, or oh, somebody else did this, and when's it going to be revealed? And that is what makes you keep turning the pages. Each of the chapters is quite short, and each of the chapters, there are several chapters which make up one day. So it's not like we have, oh, on the 23rd of December here's one chapter, on the 24th of December here's another one. On the 23rd of December we start at like 6 in the morning, and then we go right through until like 11:59, and each of the chapters has a time heading as well, so you know exactly what's taking place when. So it might be that you get 2 characters' points of view from the same time, and I loved the structure of this one. The characters were really easy to relate to. They could be you, they could be me. It's, you know, they're kind of normal, in quotes, people, just everyday people that you know or that you can easily relate to. But it's the storyline itself that keeps you turning the pages, these secrets and these like unrevealed things that might reveal themselves, and then how that's going to affect the characters under this pressure of living together in this way. It was just such a page turner. it was really difficult not to just keep reading and keep reading and keep reading. I had to go, right, I'm stopping at the end of this chapter, or I'm stopping at the end of this day, and then carrying on. I really recommend it, even though it's set at Christmas. It's not a Christmassy book that could only be read at Christmas time. It just happens to take place over Christmas. And this has been a really popular one this year. I believe it was Radio 2 Simon Mayo's book club pick. And I can see why. Then I'm going to talk about my first audiobook that I read, which is The Bassoon King by Rainn Wilson. I don't have a copy of it because I listened to it on audiobook, but this one, I'd heard some mixed reviews about it, but I think that the reason for the mixed reviews is that people were picking this book up and expecting it to just be a story of his time being on The Office, and that's not what it is. It's a whole memoir, and I really enjoyed every aspect of it that he talked about. A small part of it obviously is about The Office, and he has sort of guest pieces from his character Dwight Schrute in the book. The reason I listen to it on audiobook is because it's read by him, and you know I love to listen to a memoir read by the person who has written the memoir. I think it's the perfect way to do it. I would like to get the physical book so that I can see some of the pictures as well, because that would be interesting too. But the thing that I really liked about this book is that he is very kind of open and very honest. When things aren't going so well, he just talks about them very matter-of-factly. He doesn't sugarcoat things. He doesn't kind of go, oh, I'm going to, you know, dramatize this up to make it sound more interesting. He just said, well, this happened. I moved to Nicaragua and I got this disease. It was rather unpleasant. This is how we sorted it. And then goes on to the next thing. It's not like, oh, well, I had this awful life because when we moved to Nicaragua, I got this disease and it really affected me. It's, you know, talking about things very matter-of-factly, telling the stories, giving the facts, and he doesn't hold back with his opinions on things as well, and I really like that about it. Of course, you know, he's a comedy actor, so there's some comedy in there too. I had some laughs. I learnt a lot of things. One of the criticisms I've seen in some of the reviews is that he talks about his own faith and religion too much. I disagree with that. I don't think that he talks about them too much. He talks about his own faith and his own religion because that's part of who he is, and just like he talks about going to drama school as part of who he is, the two are comparable, and I would say that he talks about them in equal measure. So yeah, I would definitely say that if you have, you know, come across this actor and you enjoyed his work, then I would definitely recommend the book, because I think it was a very good listen, and definitely get this one on audiobook, because it was really good to hear it from the author's point of view, as I say, with any memoir. And then the next book I'm going to talk about is another book that I read as a physical copy. However, I don't have the physical copy because I had to finish it and then return it straight back into the library. So in my wrap-up video that I posted, you see me reading it and you see me talking about it, but unfortunately I did have to take it back. So this was Clicked by Tamara Island Stone, and this was a middle grade book. So it's her most recent release. I think it came out August time, and it's a middle grade book. I've read her YA books and enjoyed them, and I knew I wanted to read this latest one, Clicked. So basically the story surrounds a character who's been to like coding camp over the summer and has built this app, and she's entered into this competition to you know, show the app off, and kind of we see her dealing with glitches in the app and kind of launching the app amongst her friends and seeing how it goes down. There's also another boy at her school who has built an app and is also entered into this competition, and we see a bit of rivalry between them there. It's kind of that kind of enemies to friends kind of trope. Will they become friends? Has he sabotaged her app? Is she going to help him with his app? And it was really interesting. It was great to see the fact that this is a, you know, female lead character who is, you know, has been to this coding camp with all these other girls who have built all these other amazing apps as well, and spend their time coding and spend their time talking about code, and she goes and fixes these glitches because she's got this coding knowledge. And I think it's really good to see there's quite a few kind of books out there that are showing this side of girls, because for so long we've just had that kind of, you know, computer geek coder character be a male in books, especially in middle grade. Not so much in YA, but definitely, you know, the middle grade we've got, it's very stereotypical for it to be a male, so I liked that aspect of it. I also liked the fact that this book is a middle grade book. It shows the very beginning is the summer between 6th and 7th grade, and then the book takes place in that first kind of semester of 7th grade. And I like the fact that it deals a lot with friendship and friendship issues and the issues that friends have and the importance of friendship during this time. I really like the fact that this author deals with that head on and shows that, you know, not all friendships are always going to work, but having friends, whether they're new friends or old friends, is still really important. She also paints teachers in a really good light in this book, which really meant a lot to me as well. The teacher who is taking these pupils to the competition is female and is the computer science teacher, and again it's kind of breaking that stereotype. And then we've got another teacher who's a male teacher who kind of helps out as well and is very supportive of what these guys are doing, because sometimes it's like, well, no, you have to have your math, you have to have your English, you know, computer science is a secondary thing. And I like the fact that these teachers were so supportive as well. It wasn't, you know, the most groundbreaking of reads, it didn't change my life, but I really like the fact that these small details in there, the fact that we've got this female empowerment and the fact that we've got these very positive teacher role models, and also the fact that we've got that strong friendship really emphasized in there, that's what made the book for me. So it wasn't quite a 5-star read, you know, we have to rate on Goodreads, just because the pacing and the action wasn't like, oh, I've got to keep reading this, I can't put it down, I have to keep reading. I basically read it in just about one sitting. The majority of it I read the day that I had to take it back to the library, and it was good, and it was definitely a page turner. I mean, it might be the fact that it's middle grade and that's why the pace is a little bit slower, but I think that there are a lot of really, really positive aspects about this book, and if you are looking for a book that deals with kind of female empowerment at that middle grade level, and also, yeah, really positive relationships and enforcing positive relationships, then this is definitely a very good book for that. So now we'll move on to another audiobook that I listened to. An audiobook that I listened to towards the end of the week was On a Beautiful Day by Lucy Diamond. And sort of very differently from the previous book that I talked about, this book centers around women who are, you know, already married, are already in established relationships, already have children. This is not, you know, young women hunting for relationships. This is a book which deals with those women and kind of what happens next. Once you found your happy ending, what's the next step? Or when that happy ending doesn't quite turn out to be as you expected, what's the next step? And the book surrounds 4 quite different women, but they all have a strong friendship. 2 of the women in the book are sisters. We've got Laura and Jo, who are sisters, and then we have the 2 other friends as well. And Lucy Diamond throws an awful lot at these women. The book starts when they kind of witness something traumatic, let's say. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, and it basically bounces off of that to show how it can affect people in different ways. So some people go, oh, that could have been me, I'm so terrified. Some people go, oh, that could have been me, I need to start living more. Some people go, oh, that could have been me, I must sort this thing out that's been worrying me, or sort this relationship out, or sort this health issue out. And basically it shows the 4 different women and the ways that they deal with this trauma and how they move forward from there. A bit like the previous book that I talked about, it reinforces that importance of having these relationships and sticking together in times of crisis or issue, or realizing that actually, yes, you can do it all yourself, but if you have a little bit of help, maybe life would be a little bit easier. Or you can do it all yourself, but once in a while letting a friend help you feels nice, and is nice for the friend as well. And that's like the real strong message that I got across with that book, and I enjoyed with that book as well. I found that the characters were really easy to get to know and easy to relate to, even though I think they're a little bit older than me and kind of in different places in their lives than me. They were still easy to kind of think, oh yeah, you know, I can see that happening, or I've seen that happening with friends, or seen that happening with relatives. And sort of right from the word go, you feel like you are almost like the 5th member of this friendship group, and you are rooting for each of these 4 women and wanting to be there to support them and help them with the difficult decisions that they have to make. This was a very long book. I did listen to it on audiobook, even though I had a Kindle copy from NetGalley. This book only came out in the UK last Thursday, the 11th, but it went really quickly because I wanted to keep listening, or, you know, turning the pages if I'd been reading the physical copy of it, because again, it's that multiple narrative. We get to see what's happening with Joe, and then we get to move on and see what's happening with India, and then we get to see what's happening with Laura, and then maybe all the women will be together and they'll talk about something, and then we want to see what the fallout is with that character. And so you kind of want to keep reading on because you want to get back to Joe's storyline, or you want to get back to finding out what's happening with India, and so that definitely makes it nice and pacey. It's a Lucy Diamond book, so it has a real feel-good aspect about it, and as I say, I really like the relationships that these women had, and I really like the way they interacted together. Okay, let's see what we're going to talk about next. Well, since we've done physical book, audiobook, we will go back to a physical book again. Everything Beautiful is Not Ruined by Danielle Younger Ullman. I've been wanting to read this one for quite a while. This one has a very different cover in the UK, and I'd seen people reading it in the UK, and then I was looking for it here and I couldn't quite remember the title, but I couldn't quite find out. I had to go to someone's, I think a friend's blog or a friend's Instagram or both, and find out their cover, look for that particular cover, and the cover of it, the book, makes it seem completely different here than the cover of the UK book. Probably I wouldn't see this cover and go, oh yeah, that sounds like a book I want to read. It looks quite dramatic, it looks quite dark, and then the UK cover is very kind of bright and cheerful, and it would definitely be something I would pick up thinking, oh, this looks bright and cheerful. But actually the story inside is quite dark and it is quite difficult, and this is one of those that I had to kind of put down every so often and step away from, just because things were getting intense. This book surrounds Ingrid and her, so let me give you the kind of, it surrounds, it's got a then and a now. So let me give you the now, and then I'll talk about the kind of difference that I found between the then and the now. So the now is Ingrid is on a summertime wilderness survival trek for at-risk teens, addicts, runaways, and her. She's fighting to survive crushing humiliations, physical challenges that push her to her limits, and mind games that threaten to break her. So you can see just from that bit that this book is quite dark and quite issues based, and so it would get quite intense sometimes, so I did find myself having to put it down and walk away. Ingrid as a character is not the easiest person to like. She's got her walls up, and I think she's almost got her walls up against the reader as well as against the other characters in the book, and then part of the impulse to keep reading this is for you as a reader to try and get through those walls and get to know her a little better. And the way that this author helps you with breaking down those walls and getting to know Ingrid a little better is having the past story intertwined with the present story. So we see the now, and then we'll get a chapter from the then, the past. And it goes right back to Ingrid's early childhood. Obviously we meet her when she's 16, 17, and we kind of first meet her in the past when she's about 5. So we see the past and see how it's affected her and how it's made her who she is in the present, and then we also see her growing and changing in the present as well, which is quite interesting. I didn't enjoy the past sections of the book as much as I enjoyed the present sections of the book. I understood that I needed to read what was going on in the past in order to understand Ingrid in the present, but I found those harder to get through. They didn't seem to be as fast-paced as the present storyline was, and I found the characters in the past, including Ingrid, sort of harder to access than I did characters in the present. This book does have some trigger warnings with it, so just be aware that it covers some sexual violence and sort of depression and sort of suicide, but in different ways. There's not directness in there, but it definitely does have some trigger warnings. I also found the hike section of it quite uncomfortable to read, just because Ingrid was quite uncomfortable at the time, and so I found it quite uncomfortable reading about her discomfort, and so that's one of the reasons that sometimes I had to put the book down and move away and come back to it, just because it was quite intense and quite uncomfortable reading. Yeah, when we got further up to the past and the present meeting, I did find that I was enjoying the past stories more than I was at the beginning, just because I felt like they were helping me to like break these walls down and get to know Ingrid, and at that point I felt like the Ingrid in the present was kind of changing because I knew her a little better as well. That's not giving away any spoilers. But yeah, it's definitely an issues-based book, and I think this cover definitely suits it more than the UK cover. But yeah, it was a good read. It was an interesting read. As I say, the past section didn't work quite as well for me as the present section did, but I wouldn't like to be in Ingrid's shoes on that hike in the wilderness for all the money in the world. Definitely not. It just sounded like a nightmare, and yeah, being that uncomfortable definitely made for some compelling reading. But this is a YA novel, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, then I'd definitely recommend it. But yeah, I like this cover better, definitely. And then one that I read that I'd been meaning to get to for a while was Moonrise by Sarah Crossan. And this is one of Sarah Crossan's books that's written in verse form. I think I talked about this in my wrap-up because it's 400 pages, but the physical book has very few words on a page because it's written in verse form. I listened to Sarah Crossan's book 1, which involves conjoined twins, and again, that's written in verse form. She deals with quite a difficult topic, but she puts it in verse form, and it becomes this kind of beautiful writing, and almost the writing aspect of it and the structure of it is as much of what draws you as a reader to the book than the storyline itself. So this particular storyline in Moonrise surrounds a boy who has had quite a tough childhood so far, but is quite independent because of it, and he finds out that his brother has been arrested and sent to prison and is actually facing the death penalty. And it surrounds kind of, again, a bit like the last book, we kind of go back and forth and we see some of his memories and we see some of his present, and we see him kind of struggling to come to terms with the fact that his brother's facing this, and he feels very powerless about that. But we also see him going to a lot of trouble to try and go and see his brother, and to kind of show him that he's not alone, and to try and go and do something about this, because it's his big brother and he has all these childhood memories of his big brother, and they're all kind of racing to the surface now, and he knows that he needs to do something about it and to try and go and see him. It obviously covers his sister as well, his mother and his auntie are in the story as well, which is interesting because his auntie definitely plays a bigger part than his mother, and it's interesting seeing the different relationship that he has with his sister and his brother, just because of the difference between them. And then the other interesting thing is the way he interacts with people and how it's different before he knew about his brother and after knowing about his brother. And yeah, we get to see him interacting with some people kind of on his journey, and then interacting with some people from the past. And it's, again, it's beautifully written. It's a very difficult issue to talk about, and obviously deals with the subject of the death penalty as well, so that's obviously a trigger warning right there. This is a young adult book as well, and yeah, it's the way Sarah Crossan takes these difficult topics and these difficult issues and writes in this like verse writing and these short, very, very short chapters, almost like just sort of thoughts that the character is having or an action that the character is doing, and takes that and structures it together to deal with this difficult topic and this kind of sad story of, you know, a difficult childhood and difficult family relationships, and puts that together with this beautiful writing, and seeing kind of the two things combined. When you first start reading it, I think it is quite tough to read in that verse form, and as well as the fact that it's dealing with quite a tough subject. It's definitely a challenging book to begin with, but then when you get into it, you become absorbed in it because of the beautiful writing and then the compelling need to know how things pan out. I got this, so I had a copy, again, from NetGalley on ebook, and I'd started it back in September, but then put it down. I don't know why I put it down. So I ended up getting it on audiobook because it's on offer on Audible this month. I'll leave a link down below in case you want to get it for yourself. But because it's written in verse, although it's 400 pages, it's a very quick read, just because there aren't many words on a page, or there might be illustration, or there might be just a couple of words on a page. The chapters are very short, the sections are very short, and where some pages might have more than one section, other pages have just one section. And so the audiobook itself, I think, is just less than 4 hours, so it's a very short audiobook and would make for a very quick read as well, just like One by Sarah Crossan. So yeah, it was kind of, you become immersed and you're racing quickly through this story, and then it's like, oh, we're finished, we're done now. So it's definitely quite a quick read, but quite a challenging read. I think it would be more challenging and more difficult if it wasn't so short. I think the subject matter and the writing means that it kind of needs to be shorter, so you appreciate these things so much more. So there you have it, a few book reviews for you. I'm sorry I didn't have more to show you, but you know, audiobooks are difficult to show unless I actually have the physical copy as well. Thank you very much for watching. As I say, I hope the timings in the description box helped you. I would love to know if you have read any of these books. I'd love to know your thoughts on it, or if I have swayed you into reading any of these books. I had a really good bout of books because I enjoyed every single thing that I read. I didn't end up putting anything down. I did deviate from my TBR quite substantially, but that's partly because I ended up reading more than I expected to. I set my goal of 7 books in 7 days and I ended up reading 9. So that was quite interesting, and audiobooks were definitely very helpful during the week since I read 5 of them. Okay, I will have another video for you very soon, so I will see you then. Make sure you are subscribed so that that video will land straight into your subscription feed, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.